Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. Yeah, I hear you now.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, maybe
Weird.
just the headphones. Okay. Um, let's see. I think we're live. Are you um just checking to see if we're live. Every time I get so fooled by Facebook, it's like, you're not live. You're live, psych, you're live. You've been live for 5 minutes.
Oh, good. Well, it's good to be here with you today. Let me
Let
just get
me
this set up proper.
let me just see see if we're live. If we're live, hello. And this is Jeff Johnson. If we're not live, because I'm not seeing it work yet. Yes, there we go. We're live.
Yeah. What's up, everybody?
Hello. Okay. And then this is Jeff Johnson. If we're not live, because I'm not seeing it. Okay. All right. Yay, Jeff. Good to see
Hey,
you.
Eric. Great to be here with you today. Yep. Happy Thursday.
Thank you. I'm going to set this up so we can both see. There we go. Do you still have your phone client on? You have 3 windows open. Is one of these? There we go. Great.
I think it's just good.
So you're coming in from Portland, Oregon today, right?
Yep. Good old sort of cloudy Portland, Oregon. Sleepy city, even sleepier these days. But yeah.
What part of town are you in?
I just moved to Northeast, so I'm in the Lloyd neighborhood here, posted up. Our farm is out in Troutdale, so it's kind of just right on the expressway out to the farm, and yeah, so it's nice, central, good place to do business and connect with people.
Last time I was at your house, it looked like a giant science lab. You had mixers, you had all these kinds of crazy machines that extract the juices and essences from plants. Or do you still have a setup like that, or did you move that to a separate location?
Yeah, we've moved into a kitchen now, so we have everything kind of homed. We still have a research and development laboratory that we do kind of more explorations, experimentations, and all that. So, but yeah, we have fun with plants and try to help people connect with the earth and themselves and each other, through plants and just energy, all that kind of stuff. So
good. So just to repeat, I'm Eric Nielson, and I am an inner compass coach. So I help people really connect to their own inner voice and help it guide them and navigate through life's challenges and life's relationships from the inside out. And along my journey, I encountered Jeff Johnson teaching herbalism classes. And from the very first conversation we had, I had a huge brain expansion because the language he was downloading into my head, I found he was giving me words that then I had to go and seek concepts to match those words. It's almost like he was creating placeholders for ideas that I would understand later. So I've always appreciated the way that you've thought about plants, you've talked about plants, and how you interrelate that to a bigger cosmic vision that made complete sense to me. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on, because I really appreciate your voice in that way.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate the, being seen, and just it's one of my favorite things to use plants as a language to, I guess, really orient humans to existence. It's a great language. The plant kingdom is very rich with all the energies of the universe, so we can use it as a metaphor, as a prop, as a tool to get where we want to go.
Mm. And today I got a chance to run in the fields, and I was looking at all the little plant buds, and I remember the term that you gave me years ago, pattern language, which I've been applying to everything since then. And I wondered if maybe you could start off by just talking about pattern language, because it's such a rich concept, and in trying to find ways to explain things, and the ability to actually look past the mental concepts we have of things into the the pattern concepts, the things that ride below language. Like language is like language itself is a pattern language, but it's kind of a fixed pattern language. And the word itself kind of opens up to so many other ideas. So I'd love if you could just riff a little bit about pattern language.
Sure. No, that's great. I mean, even just taking language as a pattern language, we can see the ossification of it and how that encumbers our progress both individually and collectively. And so, when you're saying, putting together some of these words, that's kind of, the nuance is we can put words together that haven't been put together before to kind of create new concepts and break through the barriers of the ossification of the language system. And so that's one of the ways I like speaking really down to earth, but also with the appropriate words where you need it. So it's all about creating the connection between the earth and heaven, and because we're dancing on the crust in between. And so when we use language, we want to kind of keep it really connected to the earth, but we also want to keep it open to all the potential of the cosmos. And so that's kind of the aperture that I kind of bring to these sorts of endeavors. And I think in general, just to get back to the pattern language thing, pretty much everything is a pattern language. We find, even physics has gotten to the point where they say, oh, everything is just based on these two simple forces. And when we combine them, complexities emerge, but within those complexities, there's only so many variations on the theme. And that's something to relax into. And so that's kind of why when we hear some teachers of different systems, they'll say, oh, all you need to do is learn one system to its depth. And once you do that, then you can learn anything. And so that's like one of the teachings is just understanding the richness of a thought domain, of a field. And once we understand all of the dimensionality of that, then it's very easy to take that and apply that pattern language to a different domain. And so, everything is metaphor. There's only so many ways to do it. We can analyze these pattern languages in different avenues. We can see it in the fashions of the day on the TV. We can see it in the fonts on the screen and the packaging in the marketplace. So that's when we find expertise in any particular field. It's those that have devoted to dissecting and organizing that pattern language to a place of excellence with which they can play in that domain at a top level. So that's kind of a little bit about pattern language.
Yeah. And as it applies to plants, the pattern language arises in the ability to recognize shapes or the ways. I guess one of the things that really opened my mind on the patterns is that it's understanding the variations on the theme, but it's also understanding why those variants happen. When you look at a plant with a certain kind of circulation system, or when you look at plants with certain types of colors or spikiness or things like that, and you can actually translate what these patterns are informing you about the function of the plant, about why the plant grows that way or how the plant evolved that way.
Yes. And just to take maybe two brief steps back and then we can reproach. I just want to give homage to Stephen Alexander. He wrote this book called A Timeless Way of Being. And it's an architectural and it's a societal kind of evaluation kind of book. And it's very profound. So he wrote that book, I think maybe in the 60s or 70s. It kind of affected a lot of design culture. It also influenced object-oriented programming. So this is sort of the tributaries of my version of pattern language. That's where I get the words from. So I just want to give homage and recognition to the source, or at least my source, because I'm sure it's come up, timeless ways and over time. Anyway, and then back to plants. Yeah. So when we observe qualities in each other, we understand more deeply. And so that could be with each other, me and you. I could look at you and gaze into your eyes and say, oh, I see your joy, I see your pain. And we can do that with plants too. We can say, oh, look at this plant. I can see why it thrives in these conditions. I can see how it's made adjustments to adapt to these conditions. And I can see how the qualities of these conditions would potentially impact somebody with a certain set of circumstances. So it's pattern matching, and there's different approaches to that. There's sympathetic and antagonistic approaches. And so And that's kind of where we get to play a little bit. We can say, oh, let's push you this way or push you that way to find balance.
Yeah.
But really, it's through listening, it's through curiosity, inquiry, it's through opening, and it's through communion, in essence, that we can understand each other. Love is simply the depth of understanding of the other. It's understanding the capacity, the potential, all of that. So it's bringing this sort of love infused approach to evoke the understanding and the wisdom and the knowledge that will emerge from that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Can you repeat the name of the book one more time? Brandon's online, and he was interested in what you had to say. What was the name of the book again?
Yeah, it's A Timeless Way of Building, I believe, is the name of the book. And I believe the author's name is Stephen Alexander. Of course, this is stuff I learned in my teenage years. So if I have some of the details wrong, please forgive me.
Okay.
It's been a little while, but it's a fascinating book. I mean, it's all problem solution oriented. And he says problem, people don't connect after dinner at the dinner table. And he says solution. He says, make the dinner table more comfortable, put some couches there so people can relax and enjoy each other's company after dinner. And it's all this very practical approaches, but he does that both from an individual perspective and then from a global societal perspective of like, hey, here's some ways we can redesign things to optimize the system and to really encourage flow, because that's what we all want. We just want flow. We don't want to have to choreograph it as we go. We want to dance what we know. So
yeah. So let's come to the topic at hand a little bit. And one of the reasons that inspired this topic was that I've been in quarantine, but around my house are so many nettle plants. And I decided to go dig up some of these nettle plants, clip their roots, and make some nettle root cipro, which is the distilled grape juice, basically. Like, it's a high proof alcohol that the Greeks make, and it's very effective. And I thought, oh, this was something that was put in my mind when I saw you making huge vats of nettle root wine, and giving me a shot glass of it once when I visited your lab. And I know you have such a wealth of these understandings of these plants, especially one that is near and dear to your heart, that you named your company after, Ashwaganda. And I would love for it if you could dive into your understanding of this domain and kind of help us see what you see in what these plants can do.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, all plants have different energies and different applications for different results. And so what are my favorite plants? In this day and age, my mantra for plants is more yin, please. We live in an age of a little bit of a perverted yang, if you will. Fire gone mad. The world's burning, and there's all of this, masculine drive that could be, maybe labeled as misapplied. And so for me, the energy I try to bring through with plants is kind of a refining of that energy. So it's the plants that I focus on tend to be yin plants that help balance yang. And so these two plants that we're talking about now, ashwagandha and nettle, are both very, they both have yin and yang characteristics. And it's interesting because a lot of people these days tend to think, if I want to be yang, I should take yang herbs. And while there's some truth to that, there's also fallacy to that idea. And because what happens if we go so far one direction, we're going to deplete the other one. So the other approach is to nourish yang by nourishing yin. And so when we take care of yin, that can feed and bring back some of that yang energy. Ashwagandha, for instance, it's very relaxing and calming, but at the same time, it boosts testosterone. And so, it's primarily, initially, it's very yin, and then secondarily, it fortifies the yang. It helps you sleep, it helps you recover, and then it helps you get up and be strong and focus and do what you need to do in a gentle and calm way. The nettle root, very similarly, it's a very sweet kind of earthy taste. And what does it do physiologically? There's a thing that happens with testosterone where testosterone metabolically can degrade into an estrogen called estradiol. And what the nettle root does is it protects the testosterone from degradation into estradiol. So this very sweet and nourishing kidney medicine that's very good for the waters of the body and good for the flow, very yin characteristics. They fortify and strengthen the yang by keeping the testosterone and not turning into estrogens. So these are just a few examples of the pattern language that we see, and how sometimes when we look a little bit deeper, we see a little bit more of a playful approach where it's not a direct straight line. It's more of a pivot or a swing kind of approach with energetics. So, but everything's different, and
So
there's more than one way to do it, and it's an adventure.
so kind of what you're talking about is that there is a balancing act that the body is naturally doing. And I've noticed that sometimes when I take too much coffee, my system actually wants to shut down because I think I get amped up too much, and that there's some type of response happening that says, "Hey, let's actually get sleepy here because I think you're going to blow a gasket," you know. And is this kind of a thing that you're working with, the way that the body is naturally balancing itself out? What principle would you say this is touching?
Yes, so it's very common that with certain plants, if you take a low dose, it
Hmm.
produces one result, and then if you take much more,
Hmm.
it switches into the exact opposite result. And so the way that I like to describe this is just all plants within them hold different energetic spectrum that they possess.
Yeah.
And through just relating and building a relationship, through understanding, and it's kind of like with people, the way I encourage people to connect with plants is very much the way that you meet a new friend and you get to know them. It's through, you hang out one-on-one and you have a conversation, and then you say, oh, I think maybe you would get along with my other friend, and so then you can bring a couple plants together and have them play together. But as we develop the relationships, we understand how dosage and intention is kind of the underpinning of results. We need to kind of align these two things, dosage and intention. If we take too little, there's this idea that if we give too much herbs, then we're doing harm. And then there's also the perspective that if we give too little, we're doing harm. So anyway, we need to find the right amount that's going to produce the desired result, and then we need to have the right intention to go along with it. When these two are matched up, things can change very fast. Because if you just have the right amount without the will behind it, yeah, stuff is going to change. But when everything is aligned, then that's when you can really get in the fast lane and have rapid, whether it's energetic, physiological change, or both at the same time, because they're certainly connected. The energy and matter are certainly connected. So yeah.
Let's talk about some of those relationships you built, because I like the way you're describing it. You do, many of the plants that I have introduced myself to, there's a personality to them. And I even have memories of the first time I really took enough to feel it, to feel the effect on me, to know, oh wow, this is what this plant does. I really can discern that in my body, and it almost feels like a superpower turning on when you notice that. So could you maybe talk about what some of your favorite relationships are, plant wise, and what that first time that you really got what that plant was about? Tell me that first time, or tell me that time where you really got the download. I know who you are to these plants.
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's a saying that I like to say, and that's, you need to cross the line to know where the line is. And so with plants, that's the best way to get to know them, is to say, hey, and again, I want to contextualize this. There's certain plants that you want to do this with, and there's certain plants that you don't want to do this with. So when I'm talking about crossing the line with certain plants, these are plants that are safe plants that aren't going to have any negative or toxic impact. So I just want to contextualize that. With other plants that are toxic, maybe you shouldn't take them unless you really know what you're doing, or if you're working with somebody. But exercise caution, because there are some plants that can be toxic. But anyway, with plants that are generally safe, yeah, it's like a relationship that you build, and it's kind of like some people you meet, and the first time you meet them, you're like, oh my God, where have you been all my life? We're like best friends, and you're like the missing brother I never had. And so that's the thing, and that can be as simple as a taste with a memory that seems so familiar, but you don't understand where the memory comes from. And that can come through with emotion and relief, and because there's some plants that I don't know if it's a past life thing or if it's just a resonance thing, but there's certain plants that everyone has their short list of plants that are like, oh, those are my plants. Even if you don't think yourself as a plant person, if you do deeper introspection, you'll say, oh, these are my plants. And it might be like the potato, because I love potato chips, or something relatively mundane, but we all have our plants. And so it's good to kind of do our plant inventory, see where we're at with our relationships, identify which energy the existing primary relationships hold and reinforce in our life, and then how we want to direct our energy into a shifted pattern, if that's something that we're looking to do. But anyway, back to your question. Yeah, so some of my
Who's your
favorite
best buddy?
plants. Say again?
Who's your best buddy?
Well, I guess obviously it's ashwagandha. And for me, the story of ashwagandha began when I was young, and I got the internet, and I was reading all these books about Ayurveda when I was 11 and 12. And I read about ashwagandha, all the qualities, and how it was such a broadly appealing herb for so many different things. I was like 11 or 12, pubescent boy, reading about how ashwagandha was good for anxiety and stress, and good for hormonal balance, and good for sex. And I'm 12. I'm like, this all sounds great. So I really wanted to get my hands on some ashwagandha as soon as I could. And so I would go into Philadelphia when I was young, and go to the Whole Foods and Essene Market and buy ashwagandha and other herbs. But that's kind of really, the plant that I'm mostly aligned with in this life for these times. And that's mainly because it's had such an impact on me, and it's such really the quintessential herb for these times, with all the stress, with all the anxiety, with all of the exhaustion. Ashwagandha really fills a place in the modern energetic gap. People are really run down typically, and looking for calm, feeling safe in their bodies. We're all looking at our phones a little bit too much. And speaking of which, let me see if I should charge my phone. We're good. So, yeah. So ashwagandha is really my particularly, that's my closest plant. Some of the other ones, Japanese knotweed, I think, is tremendous. And the way that these unfold, Devil's Club. I remember some of these experiences I've had with Devil's Club, where there was one time in particular where I was just walking through the forest, and I saw some Devil's Club over there, and I'd just be like, yo, what up, Devil's Club? And at that moment, it was almost as if I'd just taken a very strong dose of the plant, where my whole body lit up with the energy of Devil's Club. And even as I tell you this story, I'm having this similar ripple of energy of that plant energy flow through
Me
my
too.
body. And so this is kind of the thing, where there's some of these plants, and really it's when we get to this point where we can just summon the energy of the plant, that we realize that everything is energy, and plants are kind of just props. Not to say they're not valued props that we want to incorporate, but they're energetic props, and not to say that we don't need calories and proteins and fats, but I'm just saying we can get to a point where we can energetically achieve whatever we want, maybe without the plants being right there. And that's, it's kind of like the advanced technique, or however you want to describe it, but it's something that's very real and possible, that it's important to illustrate and invite people into.
If I feel like we are chemical factories, and we are frequency factories, but the plant is the thing that teaches us the frequency. It's the download. It's saying, like, this is how you sing this energetic song, and then once you learn it, you can kind of replicate that in your own being sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, the way I say that is we're bioenergetic resonators, and transceivers. And so like we are lenses of energy, and depending how we flip our settings to the moment, because we can either be receivers and we can be transformers, we can be emitters, or we can be all of that at the same time. And so, this is the subtle energy language of this realm, is that, consciousness is what transforms energy, and it's as simple as that. And so as we relax into the power of that, we can find new applications and new wonder. So, but that's kind of the secret that has kind of been maybe sitting in front of us all the time, is like consciousness is the most powerful force in the universe. And when we bring multiple powerful consciousness forces together, then like, holy shit, it's anything is possible. So.
Yeah. So for men, let's start with men. What do you think are the most the plant conversation is a big one, but in the realm of sexuality and what's trying to happen in sexuality, and when we were on the phone yesterday, you broke that down into the energetic components in a really beautiful way. But for men, what are the allies, the plant allies that help these different processes in men? And then maybe we could explore what some of the plant allies are for women as well. What
Sure.
what should everyone have? What should everyone introduce themselves to?
Well, if we're talking about intimacy, we'll just start with talking about Rose. And Rose really is about setting the tone for a heart-centered approach. And I think that's just important. What we were talking about yesterday is kind of the foundational layering of sexuality and how it rests between, we are connected with everything, the first chakra, we are all one, and it's connected with we are community, which is the third chakra. And so through the avenue of the second chakra, we can either connect deeply to everything as one, or we can connect upward into a strong member of a cohesive community. And so that's why it's such an integral key chakral center, is because it's foundational to our interconnectedness with everything and everyone. And so with that, my feeling is for these days, Rose, and then also we want to invite a calm and what are we looking for in connection? We're looking for connection. We're looking for deep connection. So how do we set a tone for deep connection? And so some of those plants are Rose. Ashwaganda is another really good one. Ashwaganda helps us let go of any stress, any clenching, any tension in the moment, to help us really just relax into our bodies and be fully present. And there's other plants, members of the rhubarb family, Polygoniaceae. So the knotweed, like Japanese knotweed, Chinese knotweed. Some of my friends have, as I've shared these plants with them, have referred to them as herbal Viagra, where it has a, because when we're talking about connecting sexually, with men, as men, we want to relax, and we kind of want to enjoy the ride, and we want to be present, and we want it to kind of, a lot of people have different issues that hold them back from having a positive sexual experience. Maybe it's a nervous tension, maybe it's a circulation, blood flow kind of issues. And so when we're talking about herbs for sexual connection, we want to balance all these things. We want to calm people down, make sure the blood's flowing good, and kind of boost the cardiovascular function. And it depends on people's styles. Some people, maybe do the calm, love making, and some people, rock it out until they're all, hot and sweaty. So people have different approaches. And so, it's all different. And it's kind of like when we're putting together these plants for a purpose, it's kind of like a sculpture. So we kind of want to formulate as if we're sculpting an energetic experience, because all these things we're talking about, it is very much a feeling and a kind of an energetic space that we're allowing ourselves to step into. So does that make sense?
Yeah. And maybe we could lay them out, next to each other and identify what qualities these different plants bring out. Because I think, so, like, for instance, not a lot of people are connected to Japanese knotweed. I used to have some growing on the sidewalk next to my house. It's a crazy plant, just goes everywhere, takes over everything. Um, but it's actually coming up a lot because it's one of the plants that apparently works against the COVID-19 virus. Some of the actions in the knotweed are protective on the pathways that the virus takes. So it's up in my imagination really strongly right now. Maybe also talk about when you took them, like if a person takes them, this is kind of what they would expect to experience. These are the qualities that come out. If you're needing these things, these plants might help evoke those qualities for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just when you take a plant, just create that space, and it's really great to just have and it could be just a 30 seconds or even just 10 seconds. But when we take plants, it's great to just listen and feel, and also to like I said, dosage and intention. So we kind of want to know where we can go with the plant. We want to have that appropriate dose, and we kind of want to guide the efforts of the plant with our intention. So, so for instance, when I'll do my interpretive Japanese knotweed. This will be the spoken interpretive dance, if you will. So, taking the Japanese knotweed, and this could be in tincture form, it could be the root. So I'm taking it and I'm just kind of going through that experience. Initially, I taste this very much a downward grounding pull. I feel my feet very centered and firmly rooted on the ground. That's a tannic kind of earthly aspect, and then from that rooted, grounded, this kind of light emerges upward into the sky, and I feel connected both upward and downward, and I feel very intuitive and grounded at the same time. So that's kind of like the interpretive dance of Japanese knotweed. And so every plant has its it's kind of like up quark and down quark. It's each plant has its own kind of energetics, and that could be an upward energy, a light feeling, or heavy downward pulling energy. It can be hot, it can be cold, it can be warm, it could be cool. And these are all just qualities that we want to look out for. And sometimes it's both. We talk about, we think about garlic as both, in Ayurveda, they say, all of the allium family, it's both tamasic and rajasic. So first, when you take it, it's rajasic, it's very exciting, and it's like, oh, garlic. And then afterwards, and it's related to, the alliums are very much like the male sexual experience, where at first you get all excited, and then afterwards you're kind of spent. So and this is the pattern language that we find. And so and it's really just curiosity and listening, and then we kind of find everything fits into its place. So, with the ashwagandha, it's a little bit of a different thing. It's a very kind of startling taste. It's kind of a sweet bitter, and so there's almost like this soothing quality to it. And then there's almost like this warm breeze that blows through. That almost it's like makes me think of amber waves of grain, where it's like the wind blows through and everything just kind of shakes up, and it loosens everything up, And so this is kind of when we talk about physiological action versus energetic action. Physiological action is very mechanical, reductionist language typically, and the feeling is very poetic. And so I really want to encourage people to focus on the poeticism of experience, the poetic experience of plants, because that's really where the depth comes through. You can say, oh, it's antiviral and it's going to it's going to inhibit replication, and it's going to bind to active sites or whatever. Or you can just say it just helps me feel clean and clear and easy. And so I mean, and that's like lemon balm or Japanese knotweed. We could go physiological, or we could go energetic. And I think we need both these days, but from the experiential language of relating, of communicating, of building that relationship, I think it's important to feel in poetry and not get too attached to any of the scientific. It's important for that to inform our poetry, but we kind of want to stay in the human kind of feeling space.
Yeah. It's easier to, when you have the metaphor and the storyline hooked in, you can remember that. Like it seems like translating it into those terms makes it easier to reference and play with real time in your mind, rather than all the little detailed terms sometimes, I find.
Yeah, and that's a great thing about Chinese herbalism is you look at their books and it's all these stories about the plants, and that's how, and they'll name the plants after the characters in the stories or aspects of the stories, and that's a very rich way to preserve culture, is by baking it into the stories. So yes.
Yeah. One of them that comes to mind when you say that is He Xiao Wu, or Hayes. It's basically Hayes Blackbeard, right? Isn't that
Yeah,
what it
Mr.
means?
There's Mr. Ho, the dude with the black hair. Yep. And so,
Yeah.
and then his son is He. So Ho is the father, He is the son, is my understanding. And so Ho lived to 160. They say he was about in his 60s. He wasn't doing that good, and a monk came along and said, "Hey, buddy, maybe you should start eating some of that stuff." And so he started eating it. And the story goes, in a couple of days he felt good, and in 10 days he was feeling really good. And there's this progression where after 100 days, all of his ailments went away. And they tell the story how he wasn't too popular with the ladies before, but after he started eating this root, he got married, he had a bunch of kids, and one of his kids lived 130, and that's He, and so, and the way that they do it is Ho is the father, and that's the unprepared root, and then He is the son, and that's the prepared version where you cook it with the black bean juice, and that makes it so you don't shit your pants. So
Yeah.
because it takes care of the tannins, because those tannins will really kind of just flush right through you. So there's ways of preparing different herbs to kind of protect against certain aspects that we want to be careful of. When it goes right
Yeah.
through you, you don't absorb the medicine, and so cooking it with the black beans helps balance that aspect.
Yeah, that was a plant that really brought that male sexual energy through in a strong way. Like I could feel.
Yes.
Um,
And that's the Chinese knotweed. So that's the cousin of the Japanese knotweed. And so that's a longevity tonic. That's a rasayana. That's an adaptogen to an extent. So that's the commercial source. Well, Japanese knotweed, it tends to be the commercial source of resveratrol. Resveratrol has been called the greatest antioxidant discovery of the 20th century, and it's kind of like a filter cleaner. It's good for the liver and the kidneys. It also keeps the neurons clean, stuff like that. It's included in our Heroes blend. It's one of the main 3 ingredients, and so yeah, I think it's a very valuable plant. It's also a misunderstood plant. Japanese knotweed is how do you say it's called Hancock's curse, is one of its common names in the UK. If they find it on your on a property in the UK, it inhibits the sale. There's all these issues about, because it spreads, it's considered invasive. It takes over waterways and railroad tracks. A lot of governments and other organizations are paying Monsanto a lot of money for Roundup to kind of control it and stuff like that. So it's a controversial plant, and it's also a highly medicinal plant that helps us deal with toxic reality. So I like to talk about Japanese knotweed because it just kind of tells a big story about the back-asswards nature of modernity. Not to say we don't have management issues with it, but we kind of need to see the virtue and not poison our ecosystem in the name of conservation. So
yeah. Yeah, I haven't. It's been a while since I've had the Japanese knotweed, so I'm not as familiar with it as I am the other ones. So you described the kind of energetics of it. What kind of things could it help a person with?
yeah, so the Japanese knotweed is good for so many things. Like I said, it's very grounding. It's also very good for intuition, and that's those 2 things you don't necessarily always get together. And so when we find something that both helps us ground and have good intuition, that's unique. The other thing, seemingly juxtaposed, that Japanese knotweed possesses, it's very cleansing and nutritive at the same time. So there's not too many cleansing nutritives. when I think of cleansing nutritives, I mostly think of, polyphenols and, vitamin C analogs and things like that. Um, so, but, of course, it's better as the he. So that's the process. But anyway, you can eat toxic things, things that you might otherwise be allergic to with Japanese knotweed, and you won't have that reaction. So it can, not to say that people should go and take allergic things, but if you're sensitive to, say, wheat or things like that, it's a bit of a buffer against, and maybe you're sensitive to the gluten, or maybe you're sensitive to some additive like the Roundup in the wheat system these days or whatever. And so it pretty much helps protect against the impact of toxins. It also prevents, it's a neuroprotective, neurorestorative. It helps bring the nerves back and protect the nerves. Japanese knotweed's a really amazing thing. Most people look to the resveratrol, but there's a lot of other polygonum compounds in there too that have a lot of virtue. So yes, good stuff.
What part of the plant is used for the tincture? Is it when it's growing? Are you looking for the root, the aerial parts?
Yeah, so the whole plant's medicine. You can do stuff with the leaf or the root, or Yule Gibbons even used to eat the shoots. He said, tastes great with a slice of bacon. So you can, stalking the wild asparagus has a chapter on Japanese knotweed. And so for the medicine, for that resveratrol, for those polyphenols, that's going to be primarily in the root with the tannins. And so it's kind of a gnarly root, but it's good stuff. And you dig it up and you clean it. And as you cut into it, you'll find there's this, and it's best in early spring, late fall, after all the tops die down. You dig it up, it's got this red coat, and you cut into it, and it all has this orange yellow ooze that comes out of the top root bark layer, and that's where all the good stuff is.
So do you process the whole root, or are you trying to shave off that ooze?
Yeah, we shave off the top, maybe I would say 1/8 of an inch of root, and that's the good stuff. So.
Okay, great. I say that because what I discovered with nettle root tincture is that you can buy a tincture bottle, but in some ways the doses that really make you feel a major impact, it's sometimes quite a bit. It's like a shot, or when I noticed when I was in your lab and had a shot of nettle root wine, I guess is I can't remember what you were dissolving it in, but it was so amazing to have a bunch of it, which is not something you usually get when you're buying $10 tincture bottles or $20 tincture bottles. And there's an opportunity when you make it on your own that you can actually have larger doses of something. Not recommended for everything, but sometimes it is nice.
Yeah, if it's a safe nutritive plant, then that can be a really good way to really connect more deeply with it. And of course, again, we want everyone to be aware of safety concerns with any plant. So don't do this with just any plant. Develop a relationship and make sure it's safe if you are going to cross the line. But yeah, no, it's a great way to experience the benefits of nutritive plants, and to really feel it. Because that's what we're talking about. And sometimes people are very sensitive, and all they need is 2 or 3 drops, and they're like, wow, I feel that. And sometimes people need a full dropper or 2, and it just depends on the individual and the plant. Sometimes people are more sensitive to some plants than others, and so it all depends. And it's good to explore in a safe way.
Yeah. I notice I have been getting more excited to connect to the plants myself, because there's so many rich details you get, like the smell of the plant, the pattern language you pick up visually. For instance, when I'm taking Devil's Club, shaving down that sharp, spiky spine of the plant and getting to that green layer, underneath, and smelling it and tasting it, and that's when you get that full relationship with the plant more, because your brain is taking in all that information and adding it to your frequency map of what's happening with that plant. So knotweed, I haven't done knotweed yet, but I have done some of these others, and I really enjoyed my journey with nettle root, because for the first time I actually saw what that root looked like, what it was shaped like, cut into it, saw the little dissections of it, what was happening with it, the color change from the green stalk to the white root. And that was a really neat part of the journey to go on with the plant.
Yeah, definitely. It's not often that we get to see the roots of every plant that we work with day to day. So it's a very intimate experience when we get to tickle the roots of certain plants and get to know them in a deeper way. So definitely.
How about some of these plants you see in these male yang formulas? Like, what's your take on some of them? I'm kind of drawing a blank on some of them.
Yeah, like Yohimbe and Morale root and a lot of those kinds of popular ones.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I just, again, it comes back to that that yang imperative, and questioning the way that we get there, and sometimes taking a step back is the best way. And it's kind of like thinking about just, if we work out every day, maybe
Yeah,
we're not going to achieve peak performance. And so, really just encouraging balance. Not to say that, maybe Yohimbe and some of these, other things like, capsaicin, the hot pepper, or, vasodilators, um, but we want to kind of formulate with a balanced approach.
hmm
Um, and we kind of want to just be careful about the yang obsession, because
yeah,
yang without yin is just, it doesn't exist. And so we just need to really just bring balance in. And so what is that balance? That's the minerals, that's the nutrients, that's the things that are going to help the kidneys, that are going to, nourish the heart, and these other sort of
yeah,
softer sides. And so for people that are very yang focused, I would just invite them to say, um, just try switch into a yin focus for a little bit and see what that does for you. Take your foot off the yang pedal and push on the yin pedal and see what that does for your yang. And it's one of these things where, it's a part of that pattern language, it's part of that rhythm. It's like a bobbin and weaving kind of approach, where we want
oh,
to.
Jeff.
Can you hear me? So yeah, I'm here. But yeah, anyway, just saying that if we try a little bit of yin, sometimes that'll yield more of that yang that we're looking for. So um, so that's my encouragement in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
regard.
I connection got really unstable just now.
Okay,
But I think the internet heard you fine.
cool.
Yeah, connecting from Greece over to the US and then streaming live to California is sometimes a tricky business.
Yep, bunch of hops indeed.
Can you hear me okay? Can
Yep, you're
people listening hear okay?
coming through good.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. You were going in a really great segment and it started compressing and when it slows you down and speeds you up and slows you down, speeds you up. So I don't know if that translated to the live stream. Could you maybe just repeat a little bit of what you said? I would love to hear it myself. I'm sorry that you have to do that, but technology.
Oh, no problem. No, I think it's great to have yang and to formulate in a balanced way. So the main message was just for those that are yang focused and yang driven. I just invite people to take their foot off the yang pedal, to play on the yin side and see just what that can do for your yang. It might seem counterintuitive at first, but I think hopefully we have a balanced rhythm and we understand the relationship between the two energies. And it's part of the resting phase and the nourishing phase. And so just
Mm.
bringing more plants into those sides that support those, and they can be woven into a formula in the moment. If you have a sexy time formula, we're going to want to really kind of hold the energy down as we put the potentiation in. And so, and
Yeah.
what that'll yield is a nice, you know, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but for me, if I'm having a sexual experience, like let's take our time, let's make it last all night, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what that'll yield is bringing some of that yin in. Is it'll just allow people to relax, have that patience, but also have that strength present, and have it be a more fulfilling experience where you can kind of level up to plateau again. And so a lot of it, a lot of the yin sides of sexual tonics really provide the fortitude for that,
Mm.
um, how do you say, brinksmanship, or whatever word you want to describe. But
Well,
semen retention,
okay.
because I don't know. I mean, I imagine that people listening have had orgasms without ejaculation, and that's one of the things that herbs can really help with, because a lot of times that release is due to a certain aspect of tension. And so when we have the herbs that can help us breathe through, help the energy come up, we can have a different kind of orgasm where it shoots out the top of our head rather than shoots out the front. So, and that's kind of more of the tantric aspect, that we can weave these herbs into a more fulfilling, deeper cosmic connection of sexual expression, because that's really what the metaphor of sex is. It's a remembrance of the divinity in the infinite connection that we do when we connect one-on-one. So
Mm. So who would be the king of that semen retention, or if a person had problems with the premature ejaculation or things like that, what would be the number of 1, 2, 3 plants that you would want them to get connected to?
well, before I talk about plants, I would just talk about blood sugar.
Yeah.
And for semen retention, it's really good to go into the act with your metabolism high.
Hmm.
So basically, don't eat a bunch of peanut butter cups before you're going to get it on. Otherwise, it's going to be a shorter experience. Basically,
Mm.
when your blood sugar is lower, that's when you have more of that fortitude. It's almost like a ketonic experience, that you want to get into if you
Yep.
want those long sessions. So, so first I would start by saying, hey, if I'm going to have a fabulous, sexual session, tomorrow, then let me kind of start watching my sugar today. So,
Yeah.
and maybe that's just doing a workout, an hour beforehand, where I get my metabolism kicked up to a certain point where it's
Yeah.
not just going to, as it can happen.
Right.
Beyond that, it's going to be ashwagandha is very good for letting go of that tension, for kind of relaxing. Of course, we want to get into the breath. We want to connect with the other through breath. And so sometimes some of these aromatic herbs can really help us connect to breath. But for me, we want to kind of keep it simple. We want to keep it balanced. So for me, it's like, let's just keep it to 3. And so if I'm going to do a sexy time formula, it's like ashwagandha is going to hold it down, give me that longevity through that process. The rose is going to kind of, sweeten it, keep me centered in my heart. And then, maybe something spicy, maybe a little bit of capsaicin, maybe a little morel root, to kind of keep the yang going good, where it's like that strong kind of feeling, so some of the other plants, tonkat ali, with some of these plants too, we want to be careful about how we use them. Some of them we can grow dependency on. Tonkat ali, it's, in my experience, if you get into it, you're going to have to kind of keep up in the dose a little bit. So you kind of want to use those maybe for special occasions, for more of a ritualistic kind of endeavor, and not do it every Saturday, or whatever your rhythms are. So but in general, it's hold it down, it's like let go, open and connect. And that's the kind of energy that we're looking to infuse. And not to say there aren't other, focuses of sexual engagement. There might be a different formula where it's like, I'm trying to have sex and all I really want is a good workout. Me and my partner, we get it. And this is just about the workout one. And we're not really focused, so it's different. It depends on the intention, how you formulate, but it's fun, it's explorative, and it's really an amazing domain to both learn about oneself, the other, to connect and do a lot of healing work if the container is appropriate, so.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about capsaicin? I wasn't aware of capsaicin, and is this just getting chili peppers, or what is the right dose, and what does it do?
Yeah, so we're talking just about getting that blood flowing a little bit more, that vasodilation. So a little bit of
Yeah.
capsaicin, and it could be on your pasta before, at dinner. It doesn't need to be super formal,
Yeah.
but we want to have, we kind of want to bring in the energies that's going to help us balance and express what we're trying to do. So when we have and it's what do we have when we have a little bit of capsaicin? We have an open blood flow. We have a gentle warming. What do we have when we have too much? We have this, the blood goes to the surface. So with dosage, we don't want to take too much. We don't want people, necessarily breaking into sweat, but we do want to open the blood flow. We do want the genitalia to have adequate supply of oxygen, of blood, make sure all the nerves can do, all their transmissions and all of that. Really just keep the energetic channel open. And so
Mm.
that's one of the aspects, and capsaicin in a way is it's kind of a kicker, so a little pinch of it can really open up the formula. So
Mm.
so and there's plants where we say we want material doses of these and we only need energetic doses of some of the more potent um,
Mm.
aspects.
How about Tongkat Ali? Is that a Chinese herb, or where does it come from?
So Tongkat Ali is considered an endangered plant from Indonesia, and so
Okay.
it's the root, and yeah, and it's the ground up root is my understanding, and it's kind of potent. I've experienced it some different times. It's an interesting stuff, but again, there are some political concerns and environmental concerns around it. So just check your sources and
Yeah.
be sensitive. The thing is, we don't really need to reach too far to find plants. I mean, the thing is, the way plants are is one plant works really good over there and it gains a reputation. But the thing is, we have plants, right around us that do the exact same thing. So really,
Yeah.
we want to be careful not to reach too far for what we need and find
Yeah.
what we need local, because we do have answers right in front of us.
Yeah. How about yarrow? I is that also a vasodilator? I've heard that that's something that sometimes goes into some formulas.
Yeah, yarrow is an interesting one. It certainly helps microcapillary blood diffusion and passage. So one of its colloquial names is soldier wort. It's great for both allowing blood to clot and allowing it to flow. Also, from an energetic perspective, if you tend to be sensitive and are with a new partner or someone you're not entirely comfortable with, the yarrow might also ease some of those energetic concerns, help you have a little bit more sense of safety and security in yourself.
Mm.
And that's also an ingredient in the Heroes blend. So the Heroes blend, just to give you a little background, has the ashwagandha, the red-belted polypore, the Japanese knotweed as the main three ingredients, and then it has the passion flower, devil's club, yarrow, and the rose. And so that's, it's not necessarily formulated as a sexual formula, but it certainly can bring connection, potency, and power to a sexual experience if that's the intention. So,
Mm. Let's talk. Let's go down the list a little bit. I'd love to talk about one that's kind of traditionally a aphrodisiac, like Damiana, that's sometimes used in that way. I found that one's a nice tea to make when you're trying to settle into that almost psychic receptivity of your partner's energetics and flow, and also the touch and the skin become very heightened. What's your experience with that one?
Yes, definitely receptivity, kind of inducer, kind of, you know, and I'm not very intimate with Damiana, but one of the interesting things I've heard about Damiana is people tend to think of it as a second chakra thing, but it's more of a third chakra kind of solar
Mm.
plexus relaxing thing. So that's just one concept to consider, but it is very popular in sexual blends and, you know, can provide, you know, certain ease and sensual um, enhancement.
Yeah. Are there any other? Well, let's talk about Devil's Club, especially if you're in Oregon. A lot of people, like Brandon right now, I think might be in Oregon. Um, you know what? That one's it's in so many places in the woods in Oregon. So to me, it's like the medicine of the Pacific Northwest. Can you kind of talk about that one in relation to this?
Sure. Yeah. Devil's Club is kind of like the fierce old man of the woods who's got the one eye poked out with the eye patch. And, you know, when he looks at you, he says, "What the fuck do you want?" And, you know, if you hang out with Devil's Club and, you know, you don't let him intimidate you, he'll share a lot of deep wisdom and power with you. So in regards to sexual potency and power, you know, it's a spirit protector, it's a potentiator. Planetarily speaking, it's kind of a Mars don't fuck with me medicine. It's
Mm.
also a I call it the Saturn side, I call it nettles for the soul, where it kind of awakens you at this deep spiritual level and reminds you that you have shit to do in this life and you better get to it because life is short. So yes, it's very much a yang power plant and will uh, promote a certain serious enthusiasm with a bit of playfulness in it to the experience. So, but it is a very serious with kind of a strangely playful side to it. So
Yeah.
it's mostly serious, and once you get to know it, you can appreciate the playful side because the playful side is it's maybe like a dry humor, if you will.
Okay.
So it's very saturnal plant where it's serious as shit, and if you get along with it, you can laugh together. You know, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, I totally get that. That's a great description. I love hiking with it because I sometimes I'll find it in the woods. I'll cut it up, with my knife and then have a little bit. And I have many memories of feeling that energy of like, let's go hike. Yeah, after tasting it, like endless energy sometimes.
Definitely potent stuff.
Yeah. Did we miss anything? How about the polypore? Another Oregon medicine that's growing on the trees up there.
Yeah, so we got rishis and polypores, Ganoderma, Fomitopsis, all of that. So, you know, when I think about those mushrooms, it's kind of like a heavy buoyancy. It kind of holds the spirit down, but then gives a certain levity, you know, and that's kind of important, you know, in these days to feel firmly rooted on the ground and then also feel not too heavy with all the stuff going on. And so
Yeah.
in the Chinese system, one of the treasures associated with these polypores is called Shen, and Shen is kind of like a peaceful spirit. It's very heart centered. It's that feeling of stillness and sturdiness and receptivity of the heart water. And so that's the energy that I think of. It's also very nourishing to the nervous system, very soothing and calming. And yeah, there's great benefit, and it's very low frequency vibration. So,
Yeah.
and we,
Yeah, I
it's kind of
definitely
like
felt that heart energy in it sometimes, the calming of the heart.
it's the bass beat, it's the rhythm section, it's kind of the background harmonic that is that earth wah 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 slow wah, you know. So that's
Mm.
the polypore energy. So
Oh, beautiful description. Julian says, I have a healthy obsession with Jeff's tincture because I remember he first found your tincture when he was living with me in Portland, and he was your best salesman. He's like, I love this stuff. Hi,
nice. Good to see.
Julian.
Hey Julian, great to see you again. Hope you make it back to the States when things are safe.
So are there any in the kind of aphrodisiac section that we've missed that would be just something that enables a kind of softness or a connection or
Yeah, well, I do want to mention blue vervain from a magic potentiation standpoint. So when we're talking about connection, merging with somebody else, this kind of thing, a little bit of blue vervain, like 2 or 3 drops, can't hurt. The way it's used in Druid traditions is to potentiate magic and to enhance synchronicity and all of that. So, um, it's sex is a potent thing. It's sex is a spell that we can, work together with people. And so to put a little potentiation in there certainly can't hurt. And then let me just think if there's any other plants that kind of come up in this regard. Because what we're thinking about is we're talking about sweet. We want that sweet energy. We want that nourishing energy. Of course, not too sweet. We want like a non-cloying sweet. We want the sweet that wants you to find more sweetness. That subtle sweet, because the sweetness that we're looking for is in ourselves and in the other, and it's through that merger that we find that divine sweetness. And so we want these subtle sweetnesses that kind of help soften and warm. So things like mallow. We think of mallow. It's a very kind of, it's solid, it's moist. Some of these qualities. Go into the more feminine side. Thinking about asparagus root, shatavari for the ladies. It's the name from Sanskrit is woman with, depending on how you translate it, woman with 100 or 1,000 husbands or lovers, kind of thing. So it's very juicy kind of medicine. So very yin, very soothing to the nervous system, very lubricating to the tissues. So some of these kinds of things. Beyond that, Tulsi is a very energetically activating. That's the Indian holy basil. So we have our energetic channels, and a little bit of Tulsi can really, like Tulsi next to Devil's Club. Like, wow, talk about putting some energy into the energetic channels, into the nadis. So, yeah, there's there's more than one way to do it, and really, it's just about taste, rasa, and that flavor. Because what we're doing is we're curating experience with taste. So that's the kind of pattern language. This is kind of the way that we want to approach it. And so, it's just like making that fancy dinner. It's like setting the table with the candles and the wine. It's getting those herbs with the story and the intention set up so we can buy into it, so we can believe in it, we can bring it into reality together. And that's the kind of approach that we want to. It's a subtle approach, and the thing is, when we embrace and approach the subtle, we can find the most profound. And so it's through the subtle that we find profound things, and that's really the message that I'm trying to share.
I feel like more data comes across, more energetic information comes across in the subtle sometimes. Like you could download whole books of information when you tap into that subtle wave versus the non-subtle wave can be very like short. On that subtle spectrum, I find like it's like a broadband internet sometimes of what can be passed between people.
Yep. And so it's, we need to tune our transceivers. And in this age of so much information, so much TV and telephones, how do we stage things so we can find the quiet, so we can hear the subtle things? And that's where the richness of life will show itself. So.
Any more for the females? Any more? I'm glad you mentioned shatavari because that one's such an amazing herb I've heard for women.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, it kind of comes back to, because there's a lot of different pattern languages of women. And so, but just in general, those sweet, nourishing, those white, like the asparagus root, those yin, even ashwaganda. So there's a thing with women. There tends to be apparently some women have trouble having orgasms because of a low testosterone. And so what happens if we, with a little bit of ashwagandha or testosterone inducing plants, we get a little push in the testosterone that can help the ladies get over the hump into that orgasm land. And so,
Yeah.
so that's for women that have issues with that, you might look to the ashwagandha, maybe the morale. Pine pollen is another one that's pretty potent as well. So there's all these different approaches, and sometimes, and again, it's that backwards approach. You think yin, but sometimes in order to have a fully expressive yin experience, you need to put a little bit of yang into. And I mean, I guess it makes sense when you say it, but yeah, it's there's subtleties to all that. So yeah, I think.
And pine pollen is good for testosterone, right? Doesn't for men, pine pollen is something that it's like a natural steroid sometimes. It can be
Yep.
that way.
Yeah. Yep. When we take pine pollen, it's pretty much like we're drinking the jizz of the tree. So it's a straight testosterone infusion. So, and science has shown that the actual testosterone it's almost a 1-to-1. Maybe the carbon is moved over, one group,
Wow.
but it's very much androgenic direct testosterone shot. I was working with some pine pollen a couple of years ago, and I'm a pretty mellow guy, but I was driving, and there was a bicycler in the lane, and I was taking a lot of pine pollen that week, and I had a road rage experience, which I'd never really had. And so I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. The fact that I had this like freak out, I was like, wow, that's interesting. So yes, it's very, very intense, potent medicine.
Good to know. Well, are there any other ones that you would consider, any other aspect of this, like this thing that we're looking at, that you would highlight or bring out?
Well, just that, sexuality is a very, spiritual component of human existence. And I just think the more we approach it from that way, with that lens, the more we're going to get a full experience out of it. And it's important to, find the right partners, partner or partners that we can explore and in a safe way with, and play with the plants, and really just, having fun, of course, all of the, consent kind of things, both with the plants and with each other as people, we need to kind of align on, but it's a really great opportunity to evolve. It's a great evolutionary vehicle, sexual expression and sexual communion. And so, just really inviting people to have a fabulous, fulfilling experiences where they can light up the whole Christmas tree and be alive as humans, together, and kind of come back together as one, because that's what communion, sexual communion is. It's a remembrance of the divine connection. So that's all. It's pretty simple, and it's pretty fun, and it's also scary for a lot of people too. So, and that's kind of what we need to start with, just making it okay, and then we can begin to play.
Oh, that's great. Last question. Well, if anyone that's listening has any questions for Jeff, please ask them in the chat before we get off, and maybe you can help answer some. If you were going to have a sexy date and you were going to make some tea, what would it be? What's your go-to formula?
Interesting. Well, if for me, I get a whole kit together, and there would be sesame oil present for massage. For me, my my ideal sexual like day, it's like a whole, wake up and have, you wake up and it's a whole sculpted thing. So of course we don't have the liberty to do that all the time, but it would be tea and tinctures, peppermint tea, probably ashwagandha, rose, tulsi, these kinds of things. and then depending on how I'm feeling, because the thing is with some of the more, you know, depending on the season and where I'm at, if it's the peak summer and I'm feeling really good and strong in myself, then maybe I don't really want to put so much of the yang infusings in there. But if it's the winter time and I've been sitting around a little bit, maybe I'll put a little bit more of some kind of potentiator in there for the blood flow. So, but yeah, definitely ashwagandha. That's going to provide some of that longevity. The hesha wu, I'm a huge fan of that. I mean, with those two, you can really men can kind of break through that that plateau and keep plateauing up. So and then those are the two, and then you kind of build the sweet harmonizers around them, and that's the tulsi and the rose, and it's kind of what's personal to you as well. What do you connect with? What's going to help bring peace and connection into that moment? What personally resonates with each other? The candles, the fragrances, all that. It's all, they say that romance starts, 2 weeks before the date. So, we gotta think about it like that, so.
Beautiful, beautiful. Does this feel like a good place to wrap it up, Jeff?
Yeah, it's real nice connecting. I hope you and your viewers got some value out of it. And please let me know if there's anything I can do to help people in these ways. Our website's portlandashwagandafarm.com. We've got the ashwagandha, the heroes blend, the tulsi available. We also have some of those other ones too that'll be on the website soon, as far as the nettle root and the blue vervain and these things. So
it's portland-af.com, right?
That's right. Yes.
Okay. All right. Great. I wish I was next door to you. So I would be shopping right now. But now I have some new things in mind. I'm gonna go see if I can find some Chinese knotweed growing somewhere in Greece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Japanese should be more easy to find, but again, you want to. It's one of those things that people do put toxic chemicals on, so you want to be careful where and how you harvest it, and check in with people, and maybe do some analytical testing. So.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Okay. All right, Jeff. You have a wonderful afternoon. I guess I'm wrapping up my day here in Greece.
Awesome. Well, send my love to everybody over there in Greece and everybody around the world. Stay calm, stay strong, and we'll get through this together. And yeah, sending love.
Thanks, Jeff.
Awesome. Bye. Thanks, Eric. Peace out.